All right. Well, it's time for us to get rolling with our program tonight. So it's a Muskoka COVID summer, a conversation with your mayors. I'm going to ask our mayors to turn their videos on so we can see everybody. Here we go. Great. My name is Deborah Martin Downs. I am your moderator tonight. I am the incoming president of the MLA, which will happen at our annual meeting in July, on July 24th of this summer. I am currently the chair of our Government and Land Use Committee, and I'm a second-generation cottager on Lake Muskoka. Before I introduce our panelists, I would like us to have a little look at our results of the poll. So here we go. So we've got a number of members from the Greater Toronto area, 23%, 10% from Gravenhurst, 5% from Bracebridge, whopping 33% from the township of Muskoka Lakes. She'll be glad to know Mayor Harding. Seguin, 6%, and we have some US visitors joining us tonight, and thank you so much. We'd like to give you a special shout out because we know you aren't allowed to come up here yet, and we know how hard that must be on you. We also have some places from other where are your Muskoka residents? So we have 15% from Gravenhurst, 11% from Bracebridge, 60% almost from the township of Muskoka Lakes, Seguin at 11%. We have 79% seasonal residents on the line and 21% who live in Muskoka full time. I'm afraid to say that most of us on the line are in the sunset of our years, 55 to 75 and older. So representing the time of our membership. And are we the MLA members? So we have 80% who are MLA members and 20% who are not members, and only 2% of you saying you plan to become one. So we've got a little work to convert the rest of you. So thank you for that. We can close the poll. There we go. All right, so let us introduce your panelists tonight. First, we have Chair John Klink. He's the District of Muskoka. John has been our chair since 2010, and before that was Mayor of Gravenhurst, the beautiful sunset view behind him. Mayor Graydon Smith, town Bracebridge. Graydon has been mayor since 2010 and was town councillor for 4 years before that. Mayor Paul Kelly, town of Gravenhurst. Paul's been mayor since 2018 and was councillor before that. Mayor Phil Harding, the township of Muskoka Lakes. Phil was first elected to township council in 2010 and became mayor in 2018. And last but not least, Mayor Ann McDermott of the township of Seguin. Ann was elected in 2018 for the first time. She sat on the committee adjustment before that and is the past president of the Little Lake Joe Association, so knows a thing or two about cottage associations. So we want to thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. We know how challenging the past few months have been, and we thank you for your leadership. And I know you've been on many Zoom calls, as we were talking about earlier, and appreciate you taking one more call with us. We've had lots of positive feedback from our members about this webinar. And of course, earlier this year, we had a lot of negative feedback from our members as well about the situation. So it's been a really difficult time for Canada, for Ontario, and for Muskoka. A pandemic telling us to stay home. But for us, which home? Concerns were raised about seasonal residents traveling back from their winter homes to their Muskoka residences or sheltering in place at their cottages while locked down. Initially, in the shoulder months, it was more manageable. But as May approached and with the official opening of the summer cottage season, a divide began to appear. Full-time residents expressed their concerns about those traveling from elsewhere to Muskoka with the potential to increase the infection rate. Signs appeared, seasonal residents were accosted, and cars were keyed. The MLA encouraged you all to address the mounting tensions. And just before the long weekend in May, you and other colleagues on District Council released a letter that underlined the importance of the seasonal residents to Muskoka and vice versa. While we understand it's an emotional issue, these are our homes too. We pay taxes, and as we are reminded by our members, we pay a lot of taxes. So we now know Muskoka is officially in stage 2 of the province's recovery plan, meaning that the patios are open. Some of you got a haircut, I can tell, and There's many services that have resumed for residents. Most of the GTAs moving into stage 2 this week, and there's still recommendations to stay home, however, but Muskoka is opening up. Many of the other municipalities are opening up, but the economic boost is needed. After a long winter for Muskoka, we need to be getting things back to normal. So it's confusing for many as to what's the right thing to do. So tonight we are focusing our discussion on COVID in Muskoka. What's happening? Why? What can we all do to be safe? And what impacts are expected as a result of COVID? So the format for our discussion tonight is that we have 6 formal questions that we're going to direct to each of the mayors and chair at the end, and the rest of the panelists are welcome to join in after the first person has spoken. At the end of the formal questions, we're going to be taking questions from the floor, or we'll also call it the Q&A box, as contributed by our participants. So we have a few housekeeping rules before we get started. First, all of our participants are muted, and you will not be able to speak tonight or show us your COVID haircuts on video. Find a Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen in the center, and you can type in any questions of the panelists that you would like. If you would include which panelist you would like to direct it to, as well as your township and your lake, that would help us as well to guide the questioning. I will remind you that this is a respectful conversation this evening, and I would ask that all questions be framed that way. We will be reviewing the questions, and we plan to have time to answer a few of those for you tonight. And if we can't get to them all, we will endeavor to get answers for you and post them with the webinar after the event. And to our panelists, a reminder to use your mute button when you're not speaking. So the webinar is also being recorded so that members or others who are not able to attend will be able to listen in at their leisure. So let's get started. We are going to ask the first question to Mayor Kelly, so you can get ready. There were a lot of angry sentiments expressed earlier this year by the permanent residents to the seasonal residents. And while we thought the rhetoric has died down, it seems that there was more to it than just the fear of transmission of the virus and potentially no toilet paper in the stores. So what insights can you offer us? Mayor Kelly, would you start us off?
Thanks, Deborah. Thanks for the easiest question. I have to look, certainly looking back, I'm sure all of us as mayors and those that have been in the spotlight for the last several months, you look back on it, and the unfortunate part about all of it, there was no roadmap for any of this. And to look to see if there was some way to answer questions immediately, that often wasn't the case. So the challenge, of course, was working through this without a map, without having a prior experience in it. So looking back, certainly, you look at those things that happened during the time. And at the early stages, and it is kind of ironic that the concern was over the amount of toilet paper that was not around. When you look back on it now, why was there a big rush for toilet paper? I still can't figure that one out. But it was the way it was. And it was part of the fear, I think, the fear around where this was leading us. In Muskoka, two of the big concerns were around the availability of healthcare should there be an outbreak in Muskoka. And also the second part was availability of food and those kinds of products that grocery stores would be able to provide should there be a surge in population. And certainly the hospitals made a pretty concerted effort to ensure that they stayed around 50% capacities in case that did happen and there was a surge of patients needing that kind of hospital care. At the same time, the grocery stores, we're trying to stock up and in addition, trying to put in measures, healthcare measures for their staff and for customers coming into the business. So the early stages were really disconcerting for a lot of people. And it wasn't just Muskoka. I'm sure that was throughout all of Ontario, if not all over the world as to where we go. But the challenge was putting into place being able to address the concerns at the same time as not disallowing people, but all of us, I think we followed the direction of the medical officers of health, in particular Dr. Gardner in Muskoka, and also the province, which was recommending that people remain in their primary residence, and that was what was being said for a long time. And of course, as we moved towards the May long weekend, that became even a bigger concern, of course. And we also knew that there were lots of seasonal residents. I live on a lake, and I know that there were lots of my neighbors that were here since the middle of March. So it was a request. It wasn't a mandate. The roads weren't closed down. It was a request. However, you know, it was interesting. Prior to the May long weekend, I did have a conversation with 3 of our owners of the grocery store to find out if they were really prepared for seasonal residents arriving. And all 3 of them, they were not concerned about the groceries they had available, stock that they had. They were getting 2 to 3 orders a week, trucks coming in. They also had staff that they'd already hired to accommodate seasonal residents. So before the long weekend, they were clearly telling me that they were ready to accept seasonal residents. And, you know, interestingly enough, they one of their big concerns, I have to tell you, from a business perspective, at least in Gravenhurst, was a concern of this divide that seemed to be out there. And honestly, I do believe that a great part of it was fueled by social media and media itself. The incidences that happened in Gravenhurst, if I talk to the OPP, I can tell you there were very few that actually happened. But any of those that did happen were certainly carried on social media. But I would say one of the things that the owners of stores were concerned about was this divide, and what was it going to mean to the long-term buying locally. I mean, we've all tried for so long to get people to consider buying locally. And this divide was a big concern on the part of those business owners, and concerned about how do we bring them back if they're that upset about this divide that may have developed. So I know they've really done a great job, certainly in Gravenhurst, doing all of the health care needs that they have to have, i.e. screens for their cashiers, the one-way signs in the stores, people wearing masks. I mean, I really do believe people have really tried hard through this, Deborah, to try to work collaboratively. I've got 20 lake associations in Gravenhurst, and I don't think there's a president of any of those associations that didn't call me directly and say, what do I say to my members? And we had those conversations, and
Absolutely.
they really helped a whole lot to be able to alleviate some of those problems. So
Great.
I guess those would be some of the things I would say.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to weigh in on the topic? Mayor Graydon Smith?
Thanks, Deborah, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with everyone tonight. You know, I sincerely hope there's no lasting effects on this or because of this on either side, and I don't think there needs to be. And I'm optimistic that there won't be. I think there are certain people in any large, community or larger community, even smaller ones, that are angry people, and they're looking for an outlet to express that anger. And when you mix some general anger, maybe, that is about a lot of different circumstances, into a situation that was very much driven by fear, you get some people that do some pretty, frankly, stupid things and say some stupid and silly things. And that has really seemed to have dried up in our community. There were a couple of examples early, but I know that the vast sentiment in messages that were sent to me or calls that I've received is that we're all part of one big community, and it's worked well for well over 100 years, and that's the way that we want to carry on. So as Paul said, I think social media played a particularly strong role in creating viral stories and situations that were relatively low in number, but very well broadcast when they happened. And I know that the messaging that came out from all of us to our full-time residents here was that type of behavior was 100% unacceptable and shameful. So it certainly caused some hard feelings, I know. I mean, nobody wants to be thought of as unappreciated, but I think it was a combination of a lot of different things, and I'm not trying to excuse the bad behavior, just trying to figure out why it happened. And I think that we can carry on as we have done in the past in supporting each other, and I see a bright future for everybody involved.
Great, thank you. We're going to move on to our next question, which happens to be for you as well, Mayor Smith. So just carrying on that theme, what are your thoughts? Should we be shopping at our local stores in Bracebridge for non-essential items? Should we be doing the tourist thing and enjoying all the shops and the services that Bracebridge has to offer? Are you encouraging us to go to the restaurants? I mean, what do you anticipate for the summer at this point?
Well, the very short answer is yes. But I think you're probably looking for a little more of an expanded answer. This will be a very short panel. So, to step back in time to the beginning of this and the original emergency orders from the province, and even, prior to that, in the very, very early days, there were a lot of businesses that were concerned about exposure of either themselves or proprietors or their staff. And some businesses took steps before they even had to, and others, waited until those orders came down. And we've seen the outflow of that, which has been very damaging to a number of business owners and families and employees of businesses, where the programs that are being offered to try and get people through this, somewhat work, but there are still a number of people and businesses falling through the cracks. There's only one way to cure that, which is to try and get back to a relatively normal business environment. And while we're still only in stage 2, at least business has been given an opportunity to welcome people back into their stores again. Restaurants have an opportunity to welcome patrons to their patios if they have them. I know that we just recently passed a motion on Tuesday, and the district did as well on Monday, to allow for a greater ease of patio creation or expansion in our community. And certainly our business community is rallying together to, make the best they can out of what will undoubtedly be a very different and probably much lower revenue summer than they would normally have after a spring that was quite terrible. I mean, the cash flow is everything for a lot of small businesses in Muskoka, and even larger businesses up here, because you certainly have that summertime where you make that hay, and then you have to live off what you've banked for the rest of the year. And this all happened right at a time where everybody was at low ebb with their cash flow. So I hope people come to our community and support our businesses. They have been doing that. The environment has certainly changed from those early days where we had to give different advice to people to stay in compliance with what public health officials were saying. But I'd ask people to take, reasonable precautions. I think it's completely appropriate for everyone to be wearing masks when they're out in public. I'm doing that. And I would ask everyone to do that, just out of respect for everyone else that you may come across. I know they can be uncomfortable. I know they're not the fashionable thing necessarily, but it's important. And I think you'll find that businesses in our community and in communities, I'm sure throughout Muskoka, are ready to welcome their patrons back, regardless of where they're from, with open arms, but socially distanced open arms.
Well, we hope so. Would anyone else like to weigh in on that? Mayor Harding, perhaps? Or Mayor McDermott? Yes, go ahead.
And thanks. And thanks, Deborah. We are open for business. We certainly want people here. And for those people who've been in and around Port Carling or Bala in the past 7-10 days, there's a little buzz going on. Patios are open. People are shopping. I stood in line at Lululemon on the weekend to try and get in and figure out what I didn't want to buy. But anyway, business is starting to happen. Thankfully, the provincial and federal government are helping out our business owners with some financial aid. I have to echo what Mayor Smith has said. When we shut down a winter economy for 6 months, we anticipate we use our reserves and our cash flow to get going in the springtime. If Muskoka was to say shut down this summer entirely, we're talking about an 18-month shutdown. And nobody, I mean no one, has 18 months worth of reserves to be able to manage their way through. So, I think it's a matter of being safe, being kind, being respectful. I agree, wearing a mask. And I think that just shows everyone that you respect the virus and people understand that you respect the virus. I'll leave it at that.
Good point. We'll move on to our next question, which is for Mayor McDermott. So we understand the COVID situation is continuing to evolve, and of course there's a lot of uncertainty around whether we'll have a second wave and the like. Our members would like to get your thoughts on two things. One, the projected impact of COVID on the revenues of your municipality, and others can weigh in on this as well, and what steps you're taking to mitigate this impact so we're not hit with gigantic tax increases in the future years.
Well, our analysis so far is pretty much that it is going to be a wash for Seguin. We have savings in the fact that we aren't running our ice pad and trying to cool an arena through 30-degree summer weather. We have savings there. I'm saddened by the cancellation of our programs, the swim, the summer camps, those kinds of things. But Seguin doesn't run those as a big revenue generator. We run them primarily as on cost recovery and as a community service. So unlike some of the other municipalities that are on the call today, we don't have transit, we don't have sewer and water. And those are places where there is going to be a revenue hit. We may see some longer term impacts as we have to retrofit buildings to ensure the social distancing and some of the plexiglass, that type of thing. But right now, for Seguin, there is not a large financial impact, so there shouldn't be a big tax impact.
Well, I'm certainly glad to hear that. Would anyone else like to weigh in on that topic? Mayor Carding.
Thank you. At Muskoka Lakes, we actually had the luxury of passing a late budget, if you will. And we were well in the middle of the pandemic before we passed our 2020 budget. We, like Seguin, do not have a lot of programming dollars. We don't have a lot of programs that would bring revenues in. So COVID and us shutting ourselves down from our community center rentals really was not a major impact on us. We've adjusted accordingly. The only impact, we did look at what we could save. We managed our way through some staff costs as best we could. The big issue, and I think Mayor McDermott made the comment, that there's also the future. And it's one thing to slash and cut for this year, but we potentially in long-term capital costs are doing a disservice in the future because those assets are depreciating. They are going to have to be replaced. And if we can try and level out the taxation, the better off we're going to be. We flattened the curve on the COVID, so let's try and flatten the curve, if you will, on taxation.
Well, we're all for that. Mayor Graydon-Smith, would you like to weigh in?
Sure, very quickly from the town perspective, where we do have some more of the programming that Mayor McDermott and Mayor Harding don't, and a transit system, I would say the impacts have been relatively minimal. Our staff nevertheless went through their budgets again, which was a 0.1% increase this year as it was, to try and find some additional pockets of discretionary spending that could maybe be delayed for a period of time should we have gotten into a cash crunch. Our reserves are very healthy if need be, but with the closure of some of the facilities and the scrapping of some of the plants, we've managed to keep our head above water quite well. We are planning on running a summer camp this summer, although certainly very modified from what you would have seen in years past, as a service to the public and those parents that need to go back to work and need to get their kids somewhere during the day. So, you know, all in all, it definitely will create some shortfall in revenue, no question. I know that the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and Association of Municipalities of Ontario that I'm a board member of are lobbying both the provincial and federal government for assistance for municipalities. But you're seeing the biggest hit obviously in cities where there are massive costs, and especially in transit, you know, almost no riders anymore. So we're doing okay, and we'll manage our way through it.
And Mayor Kelly, we have time for one more. Yes.
Yeah, just quickly, you know, not unlike Mayor Smith mentioned, we have the same thing where we have a lot of programs, and for the most part, I think it's going to balance out in the long run. We've been monitoring it pretty carefully. The question is how long this is going to go on, and what's the impact in a month from now or 2 months from now. But here's a positive side of things, that during this time, a lot of our projects that would have normally had to be held off because the facilities being used would delay some of that work being done. A lot of that work is actually getting done with our arena and our pool and so on. So the positive side is it is getting done, which would normally not at this point in time. But I think in the long run, to answer your question, Deborah, I think we're probably going to be okay. I think in the long run, hopefully anyway.
So I'm hearing no massive tax increases. So we're going to hold you to that. All right, let's move on to our next question. And this one's for Chair Klink. We're reopening and there have been limited cases in Muskoka, not to say that any cases should have been received, but 21 was a pretty good number compared to what some of the other jurisdictions had to put up with. So we're starting to feel a degree of normality again, but things are far from normal, and there's big concerns that we're going to see an additional wave, which will put additional stress on our public health systems. So how are you trying to manage the prevention of a second wave locally, and how can our members help with that effort? What can we do to make sure that the second wave doesn't come?
Well, that's the magic question, Deborah. And first of all, thank you, and good evening, everyone. Very quickly, let me offer my congratulations and thanks to the MLA board for sanctioning and arranging for this event. Through the blessings of this incredible modern technology, we get a unique opportunity to come together in these challenging times. And I know my colleagues, the mayors of Muskoka, and I are both thankful for the opportunity to communicate with our constituents, and we appreciate that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge how delighted we are to have Mayor Ann with us from Seguin Township. She's a great neighbor, and we always enjoy her presence. So to your question, Deborah, I have to be honest. At the District of Muskoka, we haven't really shifted our mindset, our operational priorities, or our protocols to the possibilities of a second wave of COVID-19 quite yet. But I can assure you that we are absolutely aware of the possibility, and historical perspective tells us that we can expect a wave, and particularly when in certain cases, perhaps certain elements of reopening are done so perhaps in the absence of appropriate protocols or too soon. And I think the success, our long-term success in avoiding a significant second wave lies in our commitment to that which we have quite frankly already implemented. To date, as you mentioned, we've been extremely fortunate in Muskoka as compared to so many other communities. And within our health unit, which is comprised of Simcoe and Muskoka, it's astonishing to see the numbers. You spoke to them. Those so very few cases, 96% of the cases with our catchment area are in Simcoe County, and only 4% in the Muskoka region. And, I think that's a reflection of the efforts of all of our residents. Each of us, every one of us, has taken the threat posed by COVID-19 very seriously. We've been bombarded with federal, provincial messaging from all levels. We've been hearing from our local mayors and their video updates on a regular basis, and we've been hearing from a vast number of health authorities at the federal, provincial, and local level. And doctors and nurses who are weighing in on social media and reminding us of the things that we need to heed. So I would like to say that I think, the combination of things that we've done, and I can tell you, Mayor Kelly and I, as members of our Community and Planning Services Committee, were provided with an update from only one of our district departments, the CAPS Committee, the Community and Planning Services Committee. And it was an executive summary, but it took 35 to 40 minutes for our managers and directors to tell us about all of the protocols that have been put in place. And in that particular committee, it's oriented towards the most vulnerable in Muskoka. And that's a tremendous benchmark for all of us. If we can ensure that our people in our long-term care homes, if our paramedics, if our other healthcare workers, if our sewer and water plant operators are healthy and following an established sequence of protocols. We have 900 housing units that the district operates throughout the district of Muskoka, and we haven't had a COVID case in our long-term care home and in our housing units. And I'm so very proud of that, and our staff and our facilities people. You talk about people who have been busy. We have a facilities department that looks after all of our facilities, and they are cleaning constantly, morning till night. So, you know, how can we, each of us, how can your association help? You know, it starts at home, Deborah. And, you know, we've got to reinforce in our mindset that we're not out of the woods yet. And, you know, we have to do those simple things like washing our hands and making sure that disinfecting wipes are available, and you know, maybe talking with our children or our grandchildren and reminding them that we are in this situation. You know, my children, the younger ones in their 20s, you know, they think they're invincible, and they forget, and they tend to start to gravitate to the old normal, and we have to continuously remind them to, you know, to take a step back, go slow, point them towards, you know, some of the news stories so that they understand how serious this is. So I think that's the key. The key is let us all, you know, start at home. I would encourage you to visit our website at the District of Muskoka. And for simple access, it's muskoka.on.ca. On that website, you'll find links to each of our municipalities, to our health unit, and of course to ontario.ca and canada.ca. And there is an incredible amount, almost too much, that you can use as resources. And for your members, I mean, there are little tip sheets that can be printed on your computer and posted on the refrigerator or on the bathroom door or on the entry door to your cottage. So your group is only one element of our community. And I have to say, I now have President Osler's phone number on speed dial, and I have to give him a shout out. And
he yours.
Oh yes, we've talked many times, as we have with so many people throughout Muskoka, and I want to thank folks like your president for connecting and offering their help. We have to stay the course, folks. We're not out of it yet, but we need to, as the mayors have suggested, do the right thing. And I would implore you to support local business. So many of us, you know, over the course of the summer might, in different times, have escaped to Toronto or Niagara for a weekend. If you have that disposable income, think about how you might use that disposable income in Muskoka. If the kids are up and they need a break, because I know they've been looking after the kids and mums and dads are both tired, you might want to send your kids to Deerhurst or to the Red Leaves Marriott for an overnighter, just to give them a breath of fresh air. The other thing too is there are a great number of young people in Muskoka whose summer job aspirations have been nipped in the bud by COVID-19. And if you could perhaps look around your neighborhood at the lake, you might know of a young fellow that lives on the road on the way into your cottage, or one of the children of one of your neighbors, and you might have a little job that you could offer them, a handyman, some raking or tidying, hopefully something that's safe, doesn't involve a skill saw or a chainsaw. You might consider creating a little job opportunity for seeing some of the young people, because there's a great number of them that, you know, aren't going to be able to find employment. And we know how important that is, to let them have a few dollars in their pocket.
Well, thank you for that. Oh, sorry.
The other thing, and finally, if I may, Deborah,
Yeah.
we have had some incredible reach outs from your type of organization, from our business community, and from the residents throughout Muskoka. And they have exerted their ability to provide some benevolence to those less fortunate in Muskoka. And we do have a number of organizations that are under stress. The food banks in West Muskoka and Muskoka Lakes, Mayor Smith's food bank in Bracebridge, and the Gravenhurst Against Poverty group in Gravenhurst. And I'm sure Anne has organizations in her community as well that could use a little hand up. We've managed to distribute close to $350,000 of provincial disaster relief social funding. There'll be another amount coming in a second wave. But that is something that we hope that your membership might be able to give consideration to. So stay the course, folks. We're not out of it yet, and thanks for all your help so far. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you for those remarks. I know I just threatened my younger son, who wasn't quite with the program, that he wasn't going to be able to visit the cottage. So that seems to have smartened him up a little bit. So, all right. So moving along, Mayor Harding, this one's for you. And as chair of the district's Engineering and Public Works Committee, you already had a big challenge on your hands with the garbage bins that the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks directed the district to remove. The MLA was working closely with the district to ensure our members have access to the waste services, and then COVID came along. So how has it impacted the work that you need to do, and what can residents expect at the bin sites and waste transfer stations and with waste pickup in general this summer?
Thanks, Deborah. I'll try and get us a little bit back on track. I know we're running a little bit late on time, probably from the initial questions. And certainly bin sites have been a problem. We have 88 bin sites across all of Muskoka. In the wintertime, many of these sites come out. They were going to be put back in this spring with a number, but when COVID came, that all got stopped. And there was a decision made back in March with District Council to suspend the reinstallation of those. As we got through late April and into early May and the pandemic continued, we realized at Engineering and Public Works, and Chair Klink and myself in particular, that many of these bin sites were not going to be put back in at all throughout the summer. So we quickly mobilized and tried to get some of them back in for the May 2-4 holiday weekend, and then 1st of June was sort of the last stage. There are still a number of bin sites where the ministry has come in and shut us down and said these shall not be reinstalled in 2020 and going forward. This is a 4-year transition program where all 88 bin sites within the next 4 years will completely be removed, and we need to find a new way to deal with solid waste. We thought we had 4 years, some of them, and again, the ministry tightened the thumb screws on us a little bit, and some of these bin sites are coming out immediately. In particular, relative to Muskoka Lakes, there is a bin site on McDonald Road in Foots Bay. There's another one right by Hamels Point Road. It's not the marina. There's a small landing right at Highway 169. The Bamoris Yacht Club on Lake Muskoka. And then probably one of the most vocal that we've heard from people is a Parker's Landing. And that is over near Windermere. And there's a number of people who utilize that bin site. We've been working around the clock, and I think Chair Klink as well. We had a Friday evening call to talk about some new solutions, and it's going to cost a little bit more money, but as a trial program right now, for some of these bin sites, in particular, McDonald Road, Bamoris, and as well as Parker's, the 30,000 foot view is we're going to be sending a garbage truck once a week on Sundays for a couple hours to be able to pick up people's solid waste and recycling. Right now, it's an interim step, but it'll be a weekly basis so that people don't have to load the garbage into their trucks or their cars and drive potentially half an hour, 45 minutes to a transfer station. So we're going to see how that goes. We're hoping to have that in place for July 1st. I know there are some emails that have gone back and forth. As I'm speaking with you right now, our Commissioner of Engineering and Public Works, I see my phone just lit up, and that was him calling me. So we are working literally around the clock to try and solve this. John, if you want to text Fred, tell him I can't take the call. But
I thought maybe he was trying to stop you from making some commitment here. That
Fred, if you're watching, I apologize. I now have to deliver garbage trucks on a weekly basis. I might be there with my own pickup truck. But everyone's trying to work our way through this and find unique methods to solve this. I know Chair Clink and myself have conversations with the ministry, and we're trying to set up a meeting in the next couple of weeks with Minister Urick to try and find some creative, and I'll call them made in Muskoka solutions to deal with these bin sites in particular. Lake of Bays have 0 bin sites. They're all transfer station, but the 88 between Muskoka Lakes, Gravenhurst, Bracebridge, Huntsville, and Georgian Bay as well is problematic. So I'll leave it at that. More to come. We will be communicating back through Lawton and yourself, Deborah, to communicate to the MLA members. There will be information, I'm hoping, first of the week on our Muskoka website, district website, to talk about these transitional programs in particular.
great to hear. Great to hear. And then the waste transfer stations are open and ready. They're ready to roll now.
They're open. We have had, and I will say, because of COVID, when people get sick, that may shut down a garbage truck. It may delay a route for a day. And we've been managing our way through that on curbside collection. We've had some transfer stations at times close, but we've worked with district staff, and we've re-employed some more staff where some of those are contract positions where we've had to put more people in to get them back open. And truly, our staff are working around the clock to manage their way through solid waste and the COVID pandemic. That's as simple as I can say, but we all know that we wash our groceries. I don't think you wash your solid waste when it gets left at the curb, which can spread the virus to our waste collectors.
Good. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate you making the extra efforts to go around with your own pickup truck and pick up the waste. So, all right. So, final question from us, from the formal questions. Muskoka, as we've talked about, is in stage 2, and we've talked that things are going to be a little different. But I know that there's a lot of favorite activities that we all do while we're at the cottage, that we only do at the cottage. So I'm going to ask each one of you to start off with some of the things we can expect. So starting with you, Mayor Kelly, if you give us a quick overview of what we can expect to see in Gravenhurst, and I hope you're going to tell me what's going on with the Gravenhurst Farmers Market.
Thanks, Deborah. Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, it's been a challenging time for events that typically take place in Gravenhurst every year. Part of the challenge around that was, of course, people have to make a commitment and financial commitment to book things and equipment and all that kind of thing. So unfortunately, a lot of events did get canceled because they had to lead notice. Examples would be the Antique Boat Show, the Antique Car Show, the Rib Fest, Dockside Festival, the Summer Curling Bonspiel. All of those events, which are big draws in Gravenhurst, unfortunately, required our summer season at the Opera House is another example, where all of those commitments had to be made some time ago, and not knowing where this is going to lead, unfortunately, many of those did end up being canceled, and it's really hard to restart them at this point in time. However, back to your question, though, yeah, the farmers market is going in Gravenhurst. They did work with the organizers of the market, did work with the Simcoe Health Unit to develop protocols regarding the farmers market. One of the things that it isn't right now, it doesn't have the artisans. It's mainly food supply that's there at this point. I know the artisans are anxiously wanting to join. They just want to make sure they get through. We've had it on for, I guess, about 3 weeks now, or 2 weeks, I guess. And they're learning from that, and gradually we'll see that unfold. The drive-in in Gravenhurst opened 2 weeks ago, which is it was a big deal. In fact, the drive-in is being used by several organizations to run activities that would never have been there before. But it's a great venue to be able to offer some of those things. Golf courses, from what I understand, the golf courses, I know Phil's a golfer too, and from what I understand, it's targeted heat time. My son is involved with Golf Ontario, and he says almost all golf courses are booked solid. You got to book well in advance. So those things are still. And the only other thing I'll mention too is about Winona and the Seguin. The Seguin's probably not going to operate this summer, but I believe there's a very good chance that Winona will start because they've been given permission to start doing boat tours. We're hopeful of that might start in August. So and pubs are open. And pubs are opening and all of that kind of stuff too. So sorry about the phone. That's my house phone. We got lots of patios opening and people are using them, Deborah. So it's a good time. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. That's terrific.
Yeah.
So, all right. Next up, Mayor Smith, tell us about Bracebridge, if you would. And I'm hopeful that the craft show is going ahead in Annie Williams Park myself, but
yeah, it's I don't want to disappoint you, but I think I'm about to disappoint you. It is obviously a very tough summer, and for many of the festivals and events that have gone on an annual basis, in some cases decades, like Muskoka, it's a craft summer show. Unfortunately, we're not going to see that happen this year. The amount of planning that it takes in advance is so great, and they had to make a decision some time ago that really pulled the plug on 2020. But I can assure you that, they'll be back in 2021. And while we may lose a number of events in Bracebridge this summer, what we are doing as a council to support events in the future is to take some of the grant money that we typically give to festivals and events every year that bring people to our community, and use a fraction of that money to support these groups anyways, because a lot of them incurred costs and then ultimately had no way to bring any revenue in, and we don't want to see them go away. So if we can provide a little bit of a helping hand, in some cases it's a relatively paltry amount of money in terms of our overall budget, maybe a couple of $1,000s, but that can make all the difference to some of these organizing groups to get them to 2021, to make sure that when we're through this, hopefully when we're through this, all these wonderful things will be back in Bracebridge. As Paul said, we've got a farmer's market every Saturday morning in Memorial Park in Bracebridge, and that continues because it's allowed under the Stage 2 reopening. And of course, also like Paul said, a number of businesses that are here to welcome everybody. And I would say in particular that kind of back to the question that you originally asked me, I think it's particularly important to come to our community, to the communities in Muskoka, and support those businesses, because they're the ones that benefit with all kinds of spin-off business when these events are held in our community in the summertime. It's part of what drives their business. And without that, that is just another hurdle that they need to overcome. So, whether it's that Saturday when the event might have happened, or whether it's a Tuesday or a Thursday, try and take a trip into town and support those businesses, and make sure that when we get to 2021, not only are the events and cultural things still there, but also all the businesses that benefited from them as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Mayor Harding, what can we expect in the township of Muskoka Lakes? And I know I'm particularly keen to know about shopping in Port Carling.
So I mentioned before, our patios and our bars are open. The Key to Bala is not open. They do not know how to social distance at that point in a concert venue, though we are trying to do some community polling to what would happen if we did an outdoor open air venue with them. And I know our Ward 8 councillors in Bala are starting to do some discussion with residents in the area currently. All other retail is open. They all have social distance protocols, only allow so many people in the store. I will also say that our locks in Port Carling are now fully operational, so people can boat between the lakes. Our marinas are all open, and again, all following social distance protocols and asking people to be safe. And the one thing, our most common shopping experience or that occupies all of our retail in Port Carling, and that is our real estate offices. We have more than anything else. Anyway, they are operating on very, very different protocols, but
anyway, they're still open.
in a form. Just call your local real estate agent, and they'll be able to help you out.
Yeah, great. And Mayor McDermott, what's happening in Seguin?
Well, I know that you specifically asked about the Rosso Market, and I can tell you that the township and public health are in discussion with the organizers of the market. The current thought, it isn't confirmed yet, but the current thought is that we'll have a test day on Friday, June 26th, to see if we can keep parts of the market open using public health protocols. It will be a different experience. There will be some craft artisans there, but it's likely, I'm saying, because it hasn't been defined yet with public health, it will likely be one member per family shopping. It'll be one-way traffic, and there will probably not be any eating at the craft market location. We'll see how it goes on the 26th. And if we can make all the protocols work to the acceptance stage of the public health, we'll continue through the summer. We are regrettably canceling things like the Rosso Regatta, the Seguin Family Fun Night, the Antique Car Show, but I am reassured that those organizations are going to make 2021 bigger, better than ever. I also want to point out that our libraries and our community service people have virtual programming for almost all ages, but focused on children and teens. So go to seguin.ca. There's a story time every day. There are programs and virtual programs for virtually every age at seguin.ca. So if you're looking for something to do, it may be more of a rainy day activity, but there are things to do in Seguin.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Well, I think we've got some things to do this summer, and it will be different. But I know I like to get out and do a little shopping when I'm up there. So I will do my best to keep your economy going, as I tell my husband when I head out. So we do have some questions from the floor, and so this one isn't to anyone in particular, although this one maybe Chair Klink would like to start with, but. We understand and respect Canada's cautious approach with respect to the border, but as a property owner, we are very concerned and disappointed about not being able to get to our home in Muskoka from the US. Have you lobbied, or would you consider lobbying for an exception for property owners from the US who can easily quarantine for 2 weeks after arrival? Chair Klink, would you like to tackle that one first?
Well, I would. Thank you very much, Deborah. And I have to tell you, I have had communication with several Muskoka residents from the United States, most recently last week. And I have to tell you, I've taken it upon myself to personally call each of them back rather than email them. They've been kind enough to have their phone numbers. I spoke to someone in Illinois and another one in Atlanta last week. And they made a rather compelling case, suggesting that they and their family are safe, and, you know, for the last 40 years in one particular case have come to Muskoka for 3 or 4 months, and they hope to do so. So I can tell you that one of my roles through my vice chairmanship of the Mayors and Regional Chairs Association of Ontario is I, through that association, sit on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities board. And I've spoken to some of our policy advisors who have direct connection to not only the Prime Minister's office, but also the federal ministers. And we have started to make some inquiries about the leniency relative to those that are property owners in Canada and in Muskoka in particular. I don't have any answer as yet, but we can only understand how anxious they are. So yes, and it may be that Mayor Smith is an executive member of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, who likely has already made a mental note and might whisper it in someone's ear. So we sympathize. As you know, the border closure has been extended till July 21st. That's stretching on, and we can understand. So we hear you, and the answer is yes, we've commenced with advocacy.
Yeah. Sorry, Anne, were you wanting in on that one?
Well, I just do want to point out, if the Canadian citizens, they can cross the border. They do have to self-isolate when they get here, but if they are Canadian citizens, they are being allowed to cross the border. So I sympathize completely with those that are not citizens, but if they are Canadian and their family is Canadian and they have Canadian passports, they can come to their property here, but they do have to self-isolate and follow all of our public health protocols.
Mayor Smith, did you want to make any comment since Chair Klink has volunteered you to do something on this?
Yes, he teed me up, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate McDermott's comments as well, making that clarification, because I think there are some people that don't understand that. I think the challenge right now is that we're seeing in different jurisdictions in the U.S. numbers creeping back up again, and that obviously makes it harder from a lobbying perspective to have a effective result. But certainly, regardless of that, I think there are people that definitely want to be here, that are property owners here, that have done all the right things and would do all the right things when they are here to make sure that they and the community they're in are protected. So it's certainly a conversation that needs to take place. I try and stay in touch with Premier Ford on a relatively frequent basis, with either texts or phone calls, and talk about things. And I know he's always got an open ear and is willing to listen. It might not always work out the way we want, but at least there's that opportunity for dialogue. So we'll continue to talk about things like that.
Great. Well, we appreciate it. And it's nice to have a premier who actually is a cottager. he can appreciate what we all feel about our cottages. So another question that's come in, do you expect that COVID may result in long-term changes to the way your municipality runs and the services it provides? What are some of the key learnings that you will maybe embed in your business going forward? Mayor Kelly, would you like to start us off?
I think it's interesting. The whole COVID thing, I think, has caused businesses, including municipalities, to do things that they wouldn't normally have done, including working from home. I think through all of that, I think what I've heard through the business community is that commercial space that they presently have been using for all of their employees may become a premium of trying to get rid of it, because interestingly enough, working from home has worked for a lot of organizations. Our kids are all involved with working from home, and their organizations are all saying, "Hey, this is not bad," and they're still operating and working well. The challenge, of course, is that, and interestingly enough, through that, they were working at home when their kids were there. So imagine how well that could work if the kids weren't there. So I think from a business perspective, definitely that's a change that happened that I believe a lot of organizations wouldn't have gone down that road before. Municipally wise, same thing. We have a challenge, and I think many others would have a challenge when staff do come back. And if we have to maintain social distancing between each employee, we've got a big problem. We're going to have to expand the size of our municipal office just to accommodate staff. So I think the long-term effect may very well be that we do have staff that will work from home. Maybe not every day, but maybe it will work out in other ways. So I think that for sure is one outcome of COVID-19 that we're seeing everywhere.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Chair Klink?
Well, it's a very short observation, Madam Chair, and that is the long-term care business. Undoubtedly, I think we all have to recognize that there have been significant shortcomings in the operation of many long-term care facilities. As I mentioned, we haven't had any problems in ours, but I believe we go a step beyond what is normally required. And, with the province having called for a commission on the examination of long-term care, I can tell you that, if we look at the attendees here today, long-term care and, a place for us in the not too distant future is going to be critical. And there have been exceptional lessons learned and some terrible tragedies not too far from Muskoka. Bob Cagey, for instance.
Absolutely. And yes, you're very right on that. Mayor McDermott.
Well, I think one of the things that we are starting to see is that there are people from the greater Toronto area and other big cities saying, you know what, I'd like to live north of Toronto, whether it's in Seguin or in Muskoka. And I believe we're going to have an increase in year-round residents, whether they renovate cottages and make them year-round or build new. And if that's the case, we owe them some of the infrastructure that they've come to expect in the bigger cities, and that's robust, affordable broadband. They are going to need that if they're going to live and work from Seguin or Muskoka, and they're likely also going to need robust, dependable daycare, whether their children are in schools or not yet in schools or after school programs. People that live and work in the neighborhood, our demands on some of those types of services are going to increase, and we as municipalities have to be ready to recognize that.
Very good point. I have another question here that I think is a little more directed to you, Mayor Harding, is that when do you expect the planning committee will start meeting again, either in person or virtually? As you know, we have a number of files on the go, the official plan amendment for the Minette area, for example, and of course your official plan review. You know, we know that there is technology that allows you to do it. So could you give us a little insight on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing to remember, though, especially in Muskoka Lakes, even though we consider ourselves very much a wealthy society, we have a number of well-to-do cottagers. We've got a number of people in poverty. We have people who do not have access to internet. And for us to hold at times planning meetings would be excluding many of these people. And the concern was, are they going to be appealed by LPAT, those decisions that are made by council, because we have not been inclusive enough to be able to allow those meetings to happen. Now, with that said, knowing that we can actually put 10 people together, we will be starting our committee of adjustment next month. And we will probably do a shorter number of applications just to confirm how things work. We may do a second meeting towards the end of July or early August, and then get back to a full meeting, and may hold some double meetings, if you will, a couple of months to try and work our way through a backlog. We will start some planning applications as well. In July, we are going to be starting some public input regarding our OP review. So we are getting back to business, as simple as I can say it, but we want to make sure, just as we are going through stage 1, 2, and 3 as such in reopening, we are going to be doing the same thing to ensure that we don't preclude anybody from commenting on any of the business of the municipality.
Well, that's good. That was a perspective I hadn't anticipated, actually, that people may not be able to participate. So that's a important perspective to have. So we're getting close to the end, and I thought we should end on a little positive note. And so I'll call this a lightning round, but there are lots of examples of people doing really nice things. And one that I heard of was that, you know, when Frank Poto managed to make it across the border to Canada, that one of the councillors left groceries for him. And do you have some heartwarming stories, or one story each, of something that really just made you say, my community really came together and did something really nice?
You want me to start?
And you have, well, yeah,
Oh,
sure,
sorry.
Paul, go ahead. Yeah, and then
Okay.
Anne, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, quite honestly. Those that were not here during the early parts of the pandemic, how communities really rallied together to support each other, and in particular in Gravenhurst. We had some pretty amazing things that happened. We had a group, that Cartesian, that came out of nowhere, which really what they did was, a group of people in the community decided that they would help get groceries to those people that couldn't get out, and they just came out of nowhere. There's about 40 of them immediately that jumped on, and they created their own website. Another one that was really, really amazing was creating masks. We had a group of women, group of people in the community that decided that we needed to have homemade masks, and so they called themselves the Masketeers. And so they've produced over 3,000 masks that have been distributed around Gravenhurst. So those are just two examples. GAP, as John mentioned earlier, Gravenhurst Against Poverty. The numbers of people that they helped during this time is just absolutely astounding. So I would say, Deborah, certainly from my perspective, seeing community rally around each other during a very difficult time has been outstanding, quite honestly.
Nice. Mayor McDermott?
Well, Perry Sound and Seguin stories are very similar to what Paul has talked about. The Perry Sound Rotarians, within 3 days of the shutdown, had a whole team of people doing shopping and grocery deliveries, and they're still at it. For people in self-isolation or seniors who couldn't get out. The quilters from the hospital are busy making masks. I don't think they've got quite as catchy a name. And Perry Sound Harvest Share has got trucks and cars delivering groceries to the people that depend on Harvest Share. And it's a touchless delivery. You drive up your car, open your trunk with your button, they put the food in,
Nice.
The people who need it come and get it out of your car. Nobody touches anything. And the community is helping each other. And that's one of the neat benefits, is the kindness and the respect and getting to know some of the neighbors that we may never, ever have come in contact with before.
Absolutely. Mayor Smith, do you have an item to share?
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of a different tack. Certainly in our community, the things that Mayor Kelly and Mayor McDermott have talked about have happened in Bracebridge as well. But I was in the grocery store about 3 weeks ago, and I was lined up, as we all are now when we're checking out. And they had music playing, and the music stopped. And whoever the manager was, I guess that day, came over the speaker system in the store and wanted everyone to kind of stop and listen so she could tell everyone how proud she was of the employees in that store and how hard they work, and that they had just put their heart and soul into serving the public through a very difficult time, which for them, especially at the beginning of this, was incredibly difficult when there were so many unknowns. And then put on a recording of "We Are the Champions," and it was about 5 minutes long. And obviously the staff felt very good about that, but you couldn't help but smile and feel good for them and be feeling appreciative of what they have done too. So I thought that was really sweet.
That's lovely. Mayor Harding, do you have one?
Thank you. The same comments, staff and people, what I do appreciate is I hear regular comments from people who are in stores saying thank you to the frontline workers, to those people behind the glass, and appreciative. And I think they certainly appreciate that. But I want to somewhat take a different tack again. And I also want to thank each and every one of our councils, because those people who serve the public have had to force and serve different in this particular time. And it's been frustrating, and we haven't been able to always get the business we want to go forward. And a lot of different creative ideas. Just share some smiles, because I've got a few of our counselors working on some ideas to communicate with the public, to be Muskoka stronger together, be kind, be safe, be smart, or some other just cute little anecdotes. Yes, it's summer. Still, we ask, when with people, wear a mask. Muskoka strong. Lovely lakes, trees, and rocks. Keep your distance in town and on docks. Wear sunscreen while on the lake, 6 feet apart, even when grilling a steak. Life preservers help you float social distance on land and boat. And those are the fun things, and we need to be able to smile a little bit about this and enjoy. It's going to very much be a very different summer, 2021 or 2020, and our life has changed. Our businesses will change. Our townships and towns will change. The way government works will change going forward forever. So let's all try and embrace it. Let's all be one community, and let's work together.
Thank you. Lovely. Last word to you, Chair Klink.
Well, now you know why I get such a kick out of working with these mayors, because, and Phil, thank you for your kind comment. I know there's a number of folks across Muskoka that will appreciate those comments. a different tact again. And I have heard so many great stories from the mayors and CAOs and individuals across Muskoka. But you know, the one that really touched me is one that was shared by the mayor of Lake of Bays, who's not with us tonight. And last Wednesday night, Muskoka, in different measures, experienced an incredible windstorm and water event. And you know, the mayor of Lake of Bays was telling me that, you know, in spite of all of this, and it's been confirmed, there was indeed a tornado that its way towards Dwight. And you know, in all of that's going on and all the uncertainty and all the personal, you know, tribulations, you know, the mayor and several others in Lake of Bays shared with me how that community, in spite of COVID and respecting all that's part of the social distancing and all of that, came together to pitch in and help one another to open roads and get driveways opened and take trees off roofs and try and get the local businesses working again. And you know, that to me is remarkable, and it's what Muskoka is and should be. So with that, thanks
Wonderful.
for the opportunity, and thanks to everybody for participating. Several of the quick Q&As I've attempted to answer. I'd just like you to know, Deborah, that I'll follow up on some of those that I didn't get an opportunity to answer. I know the mayors are probably aware of that too, and be safe.
Absolutely. So thank you, everyone, for participating with us tonight. It's all the time we do have, but it's just a special thank you for taking the time to be with us, and again, for your 10th Zoom meeting today. But I also want to, while we have you all on the line, I want to thank and recognize the efforts of one of our new members of the MLA, Sam Davio, who had this idea with Lawton to undertake this kind of an activity. So Sam guided us very capably along the way, and I don't think we could have done it without him. Also, our MLA president, Lawton Osler, and Lawton wanted to communicate with our members throughout the pandemic to talk about what's happening. And for that, he took a lot of abuse by some pretty nasty comments coming back, but he persevered and he talked to all those people, and he had that belief that we needed to communicate, and I think he was right. And it was always a no-win situation for most of us, you know, but I think fear and unhappiness drove a lot of those comments, but I think we're on the upside today. And then to recognize Katie Edwards, our general manager of the MLA, who's been working on learning Zoom and pulling this together on the fly, and she's done an amazing job of keeping us all going. So for those of you on the line, we still have almost 120 people on the line still. We were up at 177 at one point, so I guess a few had felt the need to drop off for dinner, but the event's been brought to you by the Muskoka Lakes Association. We are the oldest lake association in Canada since 1894. We promote the responsible use, enjoyment, and conservation of the unique Muskoka environment. We concentrate our efforts in 4 main areas that are relevant to tonight, and that's we protect and promote water quality, we advocate for responsible government and fair taxation, we promote responsible land use, and we lead on important Muskoka issues. If you are a member, we thank you for being one and continuing to support us, and your membership makes it possible for us to do what we do. If you aren't a member, I'm going to ask you tonight, what's stopping you? Because we do things like this, then we help with working through things with our municipal counterparts. One more thing to do before you leave is we've got last 2 polls we're going to put up on the screen. One, to ask you how you felt about the information that was shared tonight, and 2, if you'd like us to do more of these events in the coming months, assuming that our municipal partners might join us again. We didn't burn any bridges tonight. So just a reminder that our webinar is recorded and it will be posted on the MLA website, not just behind the members page, but for anyone to see, and so you may share this with your friends and family. Give us a couple of days to get it posted, and we will also follow up with some of the questions and to as best we can that you may have posed along the way. So thank you all for attending tonight, and in the words of Mayor Harding, be kind, be safe, and be smart, and good night.